How are we doing, folks? Welcome back to the Nightmare Cabin. And I'm joined. He's back. Uncle Frank is back. And today, yes.
What's going on, Joe, motherfucker?
How's it going, man? So it's good to have you back. And today we are going through a big pile of CDs, and we're going to be doing the back catalogue of death metal, horror punk, hardcore, traditional metal. You can't put this band in a box, but yeah, we are going through the back catalogue of Deceased. And where do we start? You've got 8 main albums, and then you've got some covers albums, you've got compilations, demos, and this band have got a catalogue as long as your arm. And Deceased are a special sort of band, aren't they? Because they do seem to tick every box. If you've got you've got a whole multitude collection of bands in your collection, from death metal to traditional metal and all in between. Deceased just sort of slept right in the middle of everything, didn't they? They cover hardcore, they cover metal, death metal, thrash, Maiden, melodic riffs. They've just got everything, haven't they?
Yeah, I think they're a special band, and it's not just because I'm close with King and I've known him for a few decades. Their music has changed in a lot of different ways, and from really primitive sounding recordings and primitive types of music, but all like the nuts and bolts of what he wanted, and then just kind of morphed into like a cult death metal band that is they're world renowned. He's got a lot of respect. The band's got a lot of respect for throughout the world, and what he's influenced and what the man has gone through. I would think that maybe, I don't know, if you wanted to get started with talking some of the stuff, and we can definitely, and they have 7 albums.
7,
right?
Forgive me. Yeah.
7
right.
full lengths. I know that they're working on the 8th album, but it takes a lot of time for the writing process for the album to come together, because Deceased are splintered across different parts of the United States. And as you know, some of the band members that are still remained intact with the band, they no longer play live with the band, but he still has them record. So like when Ghostly White, which was their last full-length album, which would that come out in like 2018? So we're talking
Something
like 5
like that,
years
yeah.
ago. I remember he had that album name in the works, like
18 years.
relatively quickly after the Surreal Overdose, the album before that came out. But it took a number of years for Ghostly White to come out. So while they've been writing this other album, I would think probably, if we're going to go on like the timelines of the releases of the last albums, we're probably looking at the album coming out maybe in like a year or two. So you have like
they work to their own. They work to their own schedule, and when it's done, it's done. They don't rush it, and they don't need to either. And their catalog is I think it is I would say quality over quantity, but you got a lot of quantity as well. So
significant amount. But maybe you want to talk. Maybe we want to talk about like the debut. And again, we can split around. However you want to do it. But like, I think that you got to start with Luck of the Corpse, the debut album. What was this? 1991.
Yeah, so you got a whole host of demos and rehearsal tapes, and I don't know if they were big in the tape trading scene, etc. But yeah, you've got a couple of EPs and a couple of demo. Nuclear Exorcist, One Night in the Cemetery, Gut Wrench. But yeah, I think it's safe. This is the best place to start.
Yeah.
And this is going through this catalog as well, because I go through this obsession when I get into a band where I have to own everything by them. So I'll scour the internet and but it goes on the shelf, and then I move on to the next band that I get obsessed with. And I've recently gave up writing reviews, and I'm just concentrating on the channel now. So I've now got time to listen to everything that I've bought. And what's that? The blurred background is the Eternal Bleeding. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I can unblur it, but I don't want to.
But that's why I'm doing these catalog shows, so I can actually listen to stuff I've got and listen to stuff that I want. Because when you do reviews, you know this, when you're writing, sometimes you look past the year and I've just been listening to stuff I have to review all the time, and sometimes I just want to put Slayer on or Malevolent Creation or just what I feel like listening to. So yeah, it's been good to finally dig right deep into the catalogue. And luck
Yeah,
of the
so you
Corpse.
like me, probably like maybe because I know some close one. You know, I have some. You know, one of my best friends. He's like my best friend. You know, before shows, before tours, he'll look up what the band's been playing. So he pre-games. So he'll like put the show list on, and he'll put it on his phone, and he'll listen to what the band's going to be playing. And so yeah, I've made a Deceased playlist over the last several weeks, knowing that we were going to do this. Well, God, we've been trying to do this for like a fucking year. But so you know, you start off with the Luck of the Corpse. You know, I'm sure you got some stories. I have some stories. Tell me how you came across, like when you came across Deceased and how you came across them.
I got into Deceased quite late, actually. I really jumped on board with Ghostly White, and that was through the Hell's Headbangers podcast, because you got the main guy from Hell's Headbangers got his
Chase.
Yes, but Justin's got his a YouTube channel now, hasn't he? He's getting pretty big pretty fast as well.
Really?
But,
I didn't know that. What do they do? They talk about metal?
Yeah, it's mainly just him sitting in his house answering questions. But yeah, Chase from what are they called? I've got the split down here. What are they called? No, that's not it. I can't remember now. But,
we're dealing with
crucified something. But yeah, Reaper Metal podcast he does. He does Reaper Metal Productions and Reaper Metal Podcast, and they were putting out a compilation. I just jumped on board with them then, and then I saw a podcast with King Fowley, and he's just infectious. He's just a infectious, likable guy. And do you ever just see an interview with someone where you're just like, I like this band before I've even heard them. This guy's just already made it make sense. And I just jumped in on that point, and then just scouring the internet on night shift, just picking up this one and that EP and that CD, and been making up for lost time ever since. So at first, though, my initial reaction to Luck of the Corpse was it's a very rough, round the edges. It's the pilot episode, isn't it? I think I read a review where they know what they want to do, but they don't quite have the chops to do it yet. But the ideas that are there. And but re-listening to everything in leading up to this show was I like it a lot more than I remembered liking it. It's real, there's a charm to it, and it's very chaotic, very rough, very raw, very primitive. That's the word I'm looking for. But no, it's a good fun album. But it's not. I don't think this is the best album to start with. If you were going to get into Deceased now, I wouldn't recommend.
Really? I guess with me, I'm always looking at, and we can jump around after this. I guess the reason why I selected Luck of the Corpse, and we both have, it looks like the same edition. So on the back of it, who released this? Because I have the reissue. Is it HGD? Yeah. My buddy from Philly, Mike Giuliano, Horror Paint Gore Death Productions. So they reissued Luck of the Corpse several years ago, and the album cover is cleaned up because the original one, which came out in 1991. I mean, you got your computer on or whatever like that. It was blurred out. So I came across Deceased in 1991. So
you were there from the beginning. Brilliant. Right.
Yeah. I wasn't there from like the 80s because I got into tape trading. I got into vinyl trading with God, I'm trying to think of what year it was. It was definitely around like 86, 87. I started vinyl trading with people around the world, a lot with Brazil, and so I've been a Brazilian metal fan since the inception of Sepultura, and
Yeah.
Volcano and all those bands, because I had Brazilian pen pals, and I would be getting like Chacal, Mutilator, Volcano, all these like
Sarcophago. Yeah.
Sarcophago, the first album. I remember that, and the guy's like, I can't get these other American metal albums over there, so I'm shipping him Testament and Slayer. It was real wild. So, and then I started with tape trading, but it there's so much, and there was so much going on back then in terms of the underground, and who am I going to write to, and I didn't fucking have a job. I didn't have money to but I was like grabbing, mowing people's lawns and shoveling people's their driveways with snow, pocket the money, go to the store, get some records or do some tape trading. But Deceased, that logo always stood out for me, and so they are the reason why I thought that this would be good to talk about, is because this is the first album that was released on Relapse Records.
Really? Yes.
So Relapse Records started out as a distro, and they would, distro, in terms of like, they had a small abundance of shirts they would sell, other CDs, albums. They also, their transition was also to be a full-time record label, to have bands.
Yeah.
So I knew that Deceased, I really, this was a blind buy. It was, because I wasn't familiar with their demo stuff. I saw the band logo all the time. Again, I wasn't living in the DC, Maryland metropolitan area. I'm from New York. So I remember the album was going to come out, and it was being touted. It was like it was the first album that was going to come out. And back then, Primitive is what was getting, a lot of that stuff wasn't getting fleshed out. And this is a raw album. And I fell in love with it immediately because of the aggression. It's extremely catchy. Is it the tightest album out there? Of course not. It was 1991. You had a bunch of young guys fucking, probably, strewn out on PCP, playing all the different types of the songs. A lot of the songs were rehearsal and demo songs that were reimagined, or they kept the same nuts and bolts and they tightened it up. And this album is phenomenal in a lot of ways. It's, and this is, definitely the death metal from the grave is, that's a really good tagline that the band came up with, because I look at that as, that's music that's primitive and it's brutal. And so many songs on here, like whether it was, The Cemetery's Full is still one of the, I know this album backwards and forwards in terms of like the rhythms, the vocals, the lyrics, Fading Survival. I mean, I could keep on going on. And I don't, we'll talk a little bit about, well, I'll say, Haunted Cerebellum,
Decrepit Coma as well, I like, and Psychedelic Warriors were standouts for me.
Yeah, and anytime that he plays in the area, and if I'm able to go, he and I'll jawbone for like before they go on for a real long time. We'll hang out, and then I get up on stage with them. And so one of their shows that they played, a place was called the Pie Shop in DC. It was awesome. It was like the venue was upstairs, downstairs. You go downstairs, and they made homemade pies, like these personal pies. Some of them were savory, some of them were sweet, and just delicious. But the club was really good, and they were playing. And he said to me, he was like, Frank, I want you to come up on stage and sing Haunted Cerebellum. And I was like, it's like one of my fucking favorite like death metal songs of all time. So and I know how you ever do the edit, whatever, you'll be posting. I sent you some of those live shots, but yeah, I got up on stage and I was up there fucking. I remember I was wearing an Internal Bleeding shirt that day, and I got up on stage and I sang Haunted Cerebellum with them. And anytime that they play, I'll do backing vocals on certain songs, and he'll send certain songs out to me. And that was big too, because I was, it wasn't just like where I was in the crowd and he was giving me the microphone. he invited me up on stage, put his arm around me, we hugged, and then he gave me the microphone. And it was just, that I geek out with that, and I've been involved in the scene since, forever, since the early 90s. And then, with being in the bands and doing the stuff that I do, but still I get geeked out with that type of stuff because I've been listening to this guy's fucking band since 1991. So it was, I think, definitely a good, it, not only in terms of showing like primitive types of, death metal, and that you can play death metal and you can play it catchy and it was in its raw stage. You could also say that this album, and maybe the band doesn't get enough credit for it, and I understand, and King would probably agree with me. However, this helped Relapse Records. They did promotions with this, and to tout something as like the debut release on this new upcoming label. This album sold pretty well.
Yeah, that's crazy because that, how big is Relapse record now? It's like one of the flagship metal labels, but it's definitely the flagship for extreme metal. You can talk about Metal Blade or Roadrunner and all the rest of it, but if you're in the extreme, like you're pushing boundaries, Relapse is where you want to be. And I've never thought about what their first album release would have been. So yeah, that's a cool little tip. This is perfect as well because I've come in at the end and worked my way retrospectively. You've been there at the beginning, so we're gonna have both perspective here. So this is perfect.
Yeah, because if you came in at Ghostly White, then you're seeing the band at the pinnacle of songwriting, musicianship, production values. But then if you then take the seventh album and you go to the first album, you're like, whoa. But it's cool to see, that you were able to go back and still be a fan of their earlier stuff with just getting into the band relatively recently, because some of the earlier recordings, the first several releases they could be a little bit rough in terms of production values, but that type of stuff never really bothered me, because if you're dealing with stuff nowadays, the majority of stuff, let's say you're going from a digital recording and it's got certain nuances in terms of how it's going to sound, but then you're going to be going back to listening to something that was recorded in analog. It's, but the one thing I could say is Deceased has never been over processed. They've never made music that was fake sounding in any types of way. And it always, even still to this day, still has a very organic nature. And that's my jam. Because
that's why I like doing these shows anyway, because that's the interesting part for me is the evolution from album to album. That's what I love analyzing. So, but yeah, it's it's a great debut. It's just, to me, it's just miles away from where the band are now. But it's great seeing that initial. It's like the Evil Dead. This is the first Evil Dead film.
Yeah.
It's they've made this horror film with the limited resources that they have and made a classic. But what would come later, once they've got a budget, you see what they would have done had they have done that budget, had that budget on that first film. I think that's the best way to put it across. And yeah, and if anyone doesn't know, that front cover is from Black Sabbath, the film that inspired the band Black Sabbath. They named themselves after a Boris Karloff film, and yeah, so I think that's symbolic in a lot of ways as well, because if you ever watch a podcast with King Fowley or you get into the Diseased back catalogue or his other bands, you just know that the guy just lives and breathes metal. So, so we'll move on.
How do you like the Deceased shirt? This is Behind the Mourner's Veil. You like that?
Nice.
It's nice. It's really nice. I'm really hot, though. I'm not really much of a fan, obviously, as you can tell. But
yeah,
figured that, I'm going to be like Lady Gaga. Oh, what is that? Another Deceased shirt. Oh, Jesus Christ. What the hell is that? This is actually a tour shirt.
I thought you've been lifting weights actually recently, Frank. But yeah,
I am.
That's a life hack. Don't go to the gym. Just put 10 t-shirts on.
Absolutely. No, I've actually I got a new workout regimen I've been doing. Sometimes when I go to the gym, I do I call them 300s. So and I'm a little bit younger, but it doesn't matter. The muscles are still there from working out for forever. I do, if I'm going to do like biceps, I do 300 reps. Yeah,
Oh,
I break it up into like 4 sets, and I do 300 reps of a variety of, yeah. So it's and I'll do that with chest too. I'll do maybe like 200 reps, and
just
so
it's one of everything. Just lift it 300 times.
I'll do like I'll do 60 reps in one set. Yeah, I'm a nutbag. But so yeah, this is a tour shirt. This a lot of these shirts. So, well, not like Behind the Mourner's Veil. You can go on Hell's Headbangers, which the band is signed with, and Hell's Headbangers has a phenomenal amount of merch for deceased. I still always like, oh man, I got to get a hoodie and stuff like that. But a lot of this stuff, you only get it from the shows. King will just print this shit up. So this is a tour. This is from their 30th anniversary. It's got zombies and shit, and it's got pictures of them on the back. So it's
they're the full package as well. All their stuff looks awesome. All their albums, all the t-shirts, all everything. You get everything with Deceased. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So we'll touch on this one quickly. So this is a EP between albums, and this is the 13 Frightened Souls, which I think is just as important as anything else in the catalog.
Yep.
And yeah, Robotic Village, 13 Frightened Souls. You got a couple of songs like Nuclear Exorcist and Planet re-recorded from the demos. And yeah, just as important. It's not a full-length album, but to me, it's just as an important release. And I've got
absolutely, it was a stopgap release before the next album. It came out a year later after the debut, Luck of the Corpse. Covering, he did a cover of his favorite band, Voivod. Did the band name song, Voivod. I thought that again, first day buyer of this when it came out in 1992. The production values were increased. This is like one of my favorite EPs of all time. Yeah. I love the guitar sound on this. For me, it's one of the best guitar sounds Deceased ever did. And the drum sound, for some reason, King's, the double bass and everything, I don't know. And it's very catchy. 13 frightened souls.
And it's a mainstay in the set list. You've got
Yep.
So it's just
they'll still play that occasionally. Obviously, Nuclear Exorcist, and you got the whole vinyl. You got the whole shebang. I can't take a vinyl and put that in a CD. Oh man, that's gnarly. That's so cool.
Yeah, I haven't even played it.
You're probably not going to.
But yeah, and the artwork looks awesome on the, when it's blown up, and yes.
I do want to mention something about that. Well, so you can see with this, this is the original. This is the original CD from 1992. On the spine, this is around the time that bands started to be able to do like the clear CDs. It says Relapse there, but on the spine it says Deceased, the 13 Frightened Souls. So they're one of the first bands to actually come out with a release where the logo wasn't plastered on the album, and I still have the original sticker. This is I keep my shit in pristine condition. So the original sticker says, lucidly raw classic death metal from America's pioneering underground fiends. And
I think that's the one. Yeah, I've got that one.
But who released it? Relapse. Okay, so all right, so okay, but I doubt that that's from 1992. That has to be a reissue.
No, this is 1992. Yeah.
Okay, well, God bless you. So
God bless Discogs. Yeah, I bought that secondhand. So.
Well, that's okay. So you got an original off of Discogs. Yeah. So God bless you. So I don't know how you feel about it, but quite honestly, I've never been the biggest fan of buying a release where the band logo wasn't on it, because I like Deceased logos. I like bands logos, but yeah, this was different where their album that the logo's not on it. On the vinyl it is, but you have to understand, going into a record shop.
Never thought about it. Yeah.
Going into the record shop back in the day, you know, if you're just looking for something to buy quick, oh, where's the new Deceased? And you're not really checking. You may have missed it if you didn't pick up the CD and if you didn't know what the album cover looked like. But they kept it off because they wanted like the full artwork. But that artwork it's rather creepy.
It's cool. I really like it.
Yeah.
I love how it's, the more you look at it, the more strikes out and jumps out at you, and it's two different. Yeah, kind of like an early Magic Eye. But yeah, no, this is again just as important in the band's catalog. Although it is an EP, you definitely need it. And then moving on to what I think is a unique album in the band's catalog, the Blueprints of Madness. And this is, well, it's definitely their most extreme album. I mean, King's drums on this are just insane. That's one thing I forgot to touch on as well. In the early days, King Fowley was not only the vocalist, but also the drummer. Did you see them in the early days? And was he, you know, doing a whole Phil Collins mic round there?
Yeah, no, he did. He was like, that's all. So, this album, if we're to look at it, which reissue, I got this as a reissue. I had the original one, but this is Severed Records. So my buddy Barrett up from upstate New York, Severed, they released this in conjunction with King's label, in 2011. King's production, like his little album, his label, the Shrieks from the Hearse Records, and they remastered this. And there's bonus songs on it. There's rough mixes. There's an unreleased song, A Dose of Reality. And I remember buying the CD and shirt package. So this would came out if, again, I don't have my computer up, but I want to say this came out in 1995. Does that sound right?
Yeah, let's have a quick look. Yeah, 1995, you're right.
Okay, so that's in conjunction with the first, the first Internal Bleeding album, Voracious Contempt. And we were getting a lot of push from the label at the beginning. We were on a major distribution with BMG. We were in the BMG music catalog. I still have the original catalog with the promo shot of us from the back of Voracious with the album. And we were invited to be at the CMG Music Festival in New York City and to play. They also invited me to be on a music panel that day to talk about the different changing. There was starting to be some changes in the extreme metal scene, and they asked me to be a part of the panel. I also had Chris from Internal Bleeding on there, and Deceased were also playing. We were playing at this one club together, and that's my first time in 1995 ever meeting King. And we struck it off. Me and Provelis, we were just ripping on him. He was ripping on us. I remember like the club, they were giving out donuts. So that was the whole joke of the day. And still decades later, we talk about it. But it was like, that's what they fed us. They fed us fucking donuts. Like, yeah, that's really some good sustenance. So like, oh yeah, what do you want? You want the jelly? No, I'll take the Bavarian cream. Oh, the real fun times. But so I bonded with him immediately. And then I saw them play. And I was fucking blown away because I wasn't really used to, and if something is running around here, because the last time when we did the Celtic Frost stuff, I didn't have her, but I have last June of 2022, I bought a little kitty. I got her from she's a rescue kitty from the shelter. So her name's Phoenix. So she'll be periodically running around.
That's all right.
Yeah, she's a lunatic. So. Yeah, it says I saw Deceased play, and to see him sing and play that stuff, I was blown away. I was blown away. It's I have trouble myself if I'm getting on stage. I have to remember lyrics. I have to, the music that could be played could be at a different speed than perhaps our practices, the rehearsals, the albums. You have to make sure, is the mix coming through in the monitors correctly? You have to get the crowd involved. A lot of people don't realize, and we can maybe do this on another podcast, all the nuances that go on.
Yeah.
Here's a guy who is got to be the rhythm section and playing the drums. And he's got to remember all that. And he's got to sing. And he's got to remember the rhythmic patterns of the music and the vocals at the same time. The guy fucking nailed it. Nailed it. It was brutal. It was
Yeah.
brutal. It was one of the most, and I still remember. I still remember the little dingy club that we played in, and it was packed. It was packed for all of us, but it was just, it was pretty mesmerizing to see somebody be able to play that aggressively and to be able to sing that aggressively and not miss a beat. Had That's when I really, I mean, I didn't know him before, but then I instantly had like this a huge amount of respect. And you mentioned this is like, I'd say that this is one of their most extreme albums. I'm not sure if it is their most, but it's primitive still. The album cover is, because at this time, this is when around this time, Relapse Records, at this point, they were signing bands like crazy. Incantation had already been signed.
Yeah.
They were getting, into even more extreme realms of death metal signings. And so one of their artists that they were using, and who was very new at the time, was Wes Benscoter. And Wes Benscoter has gone on to do some of the most fascinating album covers, whether it's been Vader, whether it's been Sinister, whether it's been Autopsy, but he did a few Deceased's, and this is a really, really disturbing album cover, with the guy in the corner who's hunkered down with it almost looks like intestines, but it's like something organic that's attached to his brain, and he's being experimented on, and part of the wall with those fucking creepy ass like orderlies or these doctors looking on. It's disturbing, and I really think it kind of went along well with the overtones of the album. Morbid Shape in Black, the triangle, the band's continuing to sing about horror movies, but really getting into a few other, different types of realms. What do you like about this album the most?
Well, for me, what sets this apart from the rest of the albums is that feels to me much like this album artwork. I'll use my Evil Dead analogy again. With the Evil Dead films, although they're as gory and they're horror and all that, there's a lot of fun involved. And they're not to say Deceased were like tongue in cheek in any way, but they were having fun with what they do. This to me just looks more serious. It's like there's no messing about with this. They're going for the jugular musically, but this feels like it's much like the Relapse record, albums that would go on to be released and all the different bands. This
Right.
one feels like they're focusing on the horror, but it's more of a serious, we mean it sort of feel to it. And if you didn't know anything by Deceased and just saw that album cover, you'd go, yeah, brutal, and it's going to be, horrific. And yeah, it just seems like this one particular album, it's like that one element of the sound is that they ultra focused on the brutal, horrific part of their sound. And it's just a transitional album for me. It's you can kind of see where the band they've sort of encapsulated where they are at that point, but you see where they're going on the next couple of releases as well, and more melody comes in and whatnot. But this one, it looks like they just go straight for the extreme side of their sound, and they just hammer that home with this. But songs like Morbid Shape in Black and The Triangle are still, they're still regulars in the set list today, and the title track, and nothing, it's all good stuff. But yeah, just this is the one that sticks out as different from the rest of the albums.
And I think one of my favorite songs from them is actually the last song on the album, a reproduction of Tragedy, because of how he sings it at the end and how the song trails off. I really enjoy that song a lot.
That's got a bit of a. I'm thinking of another album where it's quite a long song at the end. But
it's just it gets me every time. I rewind that part multiple times.
What did you think when this? Because obviously you would have had this when it first came out. What was the initial reaction to it?
I liked it. I really did. I'll be honest with you. I still like Luck of the Corpse better, because and it's probably nothing. And again, I listen to their stuff pretty regularly throughout the year, and definitely going, going through their catalog again, like it was like a cram session for like finals recently. We're just going through their stuff over and over again. You know, I still, I mean, there's no Deceased album that I don't love. However, Luck of the Corpse came out at a time in my life where I was transitioning to going away to college, and I was already in college, but then I was going away. And Luck of the Corpse is one, you know, I couldn't bring everything, couldn't bring my whole collection that was starting to grow at the time, but I brought Luck of the Corpse to away to college. And I mean, I listened to that, I cranked that up in my fucking dorm like nonstop, pissing everybody off. I didn't give a shit. So I had, but then when I got into Internal Bleeding, my focus shifted in terms of I was buying stuff, but like my focus really was writing the music, touring, playing shows, and listening to, you know, still buying stuff, but you know, new releases, maybe when I bought them, I wasn't listening to them as much back then because my focus was really with Internal Bleeding. We were practicing multiple times a week. We had shows all the time, and then writing music, practicing my vocals, as well as working a job. You know,
yeah,
a lot of other responsibilities, but you know, part of the album that for me, Luck of the Corpse just hit a little bit more with some of the songs, with the catchiness. You know, I mean, you know, maybe the people who thinks that Blueprints of Madness is the best album may, you know, find fault with that, but it's just a different proclivity. It's just a subjective nature for, you know, where I was at that time. But I still, you know, I put all their albums at a 10 out of 10. You know, this is just like not quite there for me.
Do you agree with me though, where it's unique from the others?
It is unique. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's unique. It's got definitely. It's still got a raw sound, but it's definitely, it's darker. And to see those songs, some of those songs played live back in the day, fresh from a recording, when they were playing it live, was just, you know, it was great because, you know, when a band puts out an album that you really like, and then to see them play those songs live and the songs sound better live, and if they're, you know, King's very visual when he was drumming and singing, it was cool as shit.
Yeah, that's one thing as well. I reckon a lot of these songs would have gone across like completely different, and would have made. There's that. When you see a song live, it just clicks as well, doesn't it? It just always makes more sense. And but yeah, it's a cool album. It's a unique one.
Well, before we get going,
is it getting hot? Yeah,
like it's going to be another Lady Gaga, you know. But look at that.
Nice.
So yeah, Blueprints of Madness. This was the shirt that Barrett he put out, and it's, you know, in conjunction with the re-release years ago. And he smoothed a few things out. The remaster is it's just a little crisper. They didn't really go full on, let's take the volume knobs and just turn them all the fuck up to 20. But it cleaned up a little bit.
Yeah, I got the Lost Operations edition.
Oh yeah.
2017.
Yeah. Okay.
So cool. Moving on. The Fearless Undead Machines. Now, for me, the Cease that we know and love today, that starts on this album. Yeah, the concept album based on you got a bit of Day of the Dead in there as well, but Night of the Living Dead, Day of the Dead, and Dawn of the Dead. All those good zombie films, there's samples from there added in. There was always samples as well from Day Dot, but yeah, this is where they go full concept, really.
It's my favorite album from Deceased, and King knows it. It's one of my, it's if I was to say, you know, we have all different types of genres and we want to say these are our best, but if like in terms of like my top 10 in extreme metal, this is in the top 10 easily. And so
this is their number of the beast. This is the one that's like, right.
Yeah, like they'll either play like if they play Fearless Undead Machines or Night of the Deceased live, he always sends one of those songs out to me. He knows this is my favorite album from them. Yeah. So why for you do you feel that this all of a sudden started the Deceased sound, especially since you've been going backwards? I guess tell me.
I think the storytelling element to the band is now come more into fruition on this one. It's more developed.
Hmm.
What they're doing on Luck of the Corpse, they've improved on, but then that's sort of the foundation. But then later on, taking really like sort of the King Diamond's approach maybe, and
Hmm.
making every song a horror. It's almost like King Valley becomes a narrator rather than just
Hmm.
screamer. And just from what everything that they do afterwards just starts on this album, and not only that, it's the melody becomes much more apparent. I don't think it was. I'm not saying it was never there, and this is where it comes along, but this is definitely where it comes more prominent. And I think they just become better players as well. I just everything's just comes together on this album. It just feels, yeah, they found their feet here. They know, and they're definitely Deceased. As much as they put everything in the mix at this point, Deceased don't sound like anyone, and no one else sounds like Deceased, and that really starts here. The other two albums, you can sort of they're with the time of everyone else, and I think King has even said on a couple of different podcasts. I get the impression death metal went in, as a whole went in a different direction to where he envisioned it, and I think he's taken that vision today with Deceased.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna be a little verbose with this album. I like pretzels, so I'm eating pretzels. Pretzels are near and dear to me for a variety of reasons. Um, but I'll say this about Deceased. This album came out, knocked me on my ass.
Hmm.
And I want to say again, if you have Metal Archives up, I don't have it in front of me. I'm trying to go off of,
That's,
my brain cells. Is this 1997?
it is, yeah.
And interesting enough, that's when the second Internal Bleeding album came out, The Extinction of Benevolence. So, we were kicking it. I was at that point going to be transitioning to moving on from the band and leaving them for my career. But when I got this album, again, it's another Wes Ben Scotter album cover, and it's got
Yeah, it's
the,
awesome.
the Dead coming forward. You have like with the smokestacks in the background. It's like, well, did they come from there? Whatever. It's just creepy. It's and I had the original. This is actually a reissue. It's slightly remastered. It's from King's own label, Shrieks from the Hearse. He was selling these a number of years ago. It's a double disc, and it's got it's a lot of green to it. It's got extra green. But the one thing that is really, really cool about this is you're going to have your lyrics. You can't read this. I got to put my fucking old man glasses on. But the back is a whole. I mean, you can see how small that font is.
Yeah.
But it goes on and on and on and on about the creation of this album and the problems that they had with the album as well with the producer. And I don't know if it eventually they wound up finishing the album at my buddy's, who's like been a long staple recorder for Deceased over here in Prince George's County, Oblivion Studios. Mike Bozier. Mike has always been connected with Deceased with recording their material, and Mike's got his own bands. I've been in his, I was on the Snipers of Babel album last year. And we'll talk about my recent collaboration with his new band. But for this album, I agree with you. I absolutely 110% agree with you in terms of this started really the Deceased sound in a lot of different ways. And part of that is due to the fact that the band started to intertwine heavy metal into the death metal thrash sound. And it really wasn't, before this album, I can't really remember any type of extreme. I'm not saying that you had a band that maybe had a riff and you were like, okay, that sounds like a little bit of like new wave of British heavy metal, or maybe that's like an old Sabotage riff, or maybe that's got a little bit of like a Maiden solo, or that's a little bit of Black Sabbath doom, something like that. But the band put traditional metal in
Mm.
this, and also you started seeing it on like maybe one track previously with the Blueprint for Madness, but this album really ushered in Deceased writing longer, more complex songs, because the songs on this are pretty long. You know,
Yeah,
I think if you're talking about the lead off song, The Silent Creature, I think you're talking about a song that's maybe what, like 8 minutes? You
yeah,
know,
it's over an hour long. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. So to come, you know, and that sometimes can be a tough thing for fans, where you have a band starting off with like long songs, you know, because you know the average listener with their fucking short ass attention spans. But this is a story that's incredible. I know that King has went on record to say he likes this cover, but he envisioned something different. He felt like maybe Wes did something a little bit more typical, but he does. This is like I have a I don't have it on, but because I have a plethora of shirts I have to try and go through just to find the Deceased shirts that I have on. I have so many. I have a lot more fucking Deceased shirts, but I have a Ragland, a baseball jersey of this album cover, and you know, with his little narrative parts and how the song, how the you know it all ties together. I mean, super catchy, fucking heavy as shit. The double bass, the drums sound phenomenal. The melody, especially with the Silent Creature, with the double bass and the guitar melodies, it blew my head off from the beginning. I heard this, I hadn't heard anything like this before. And you know, obviously, with growing up with a basis of early metal, you know, to hear some of my favorite types of bands like Iron Maiden, to hear some of those like those influences creep in on this along this different, more focused, tighter sounding death metal band with these thrash tendencies, bringing in these. It was just incredible, and it went perfect with this. And King, I think he even says in the whole extensive written liner parts is because he obviously wrote those liners in conjunction with the reissue of this, and I think he still has an idea for this. I just, you know, you just never know, but he wanted to almost make this, I don't want to say like Rocky Horror Picture Show, but he has envisioned taking this a stage production
yeah,
of this album on a tour.
that'd be cool.
You know,
Yeah,
whether that comes to fruition is another thing. It could be, you know, everybody has their bucket lists, but
yeah. This is like it's their Operation Mindcrime in a way. Yeah,
good point. Absolutely, absolutely. You know, and that, you know, that's a really tough thing from a band's perspective, because I've spoke to bands before who come up with a concept, and the album is conceptual. And from what I understand, it's very difficult. And you know, when
yeah,
I've written lyrics and stuff, or when I write lyrics still, I will have like, because I do collaborations with Mortiscold, with helping them out with lyrics, but it's very difficult to. I can't imagine coming up with an album over an hour's worth of material to tie into a concept. It's so I'll guarantee you this fucking took a lot out of them.
I mean, yeah, you know it's difficult because look at the results. How many concept albums really work, you know, and it's getting that perfect mix of the concept of the lyrics matching the music and getting the two together. Because sometimes I think that, yeah, so often one takes over the lyric.
Mm-hmm.
You end up just writing music to fit the lyrics or fit the lyrics to music. And for the two to mesh together perfectly is, yeah, it's just a real hard balance to find. So, and very rarely do concept albums work, you know. And but no,
And
this is one of them.
all the songs are great. Whether it's
Yeah,
the interludes,
and
whether
it one step further, if it does, do the
Mhm.
songs work individually? Because some songs might not work unless it's listening to one whole piece as the album. But yeah, do the songs work individually as well? And yeah, I think that's another thing with Operation Mindcrime, that you get this as well. And no, it's more it's cinematic. You've got keyboards on there, like orchestrations in it. They've completely blown up as
yeah,
songwriters. They've completely got
yeah,
off on one.
the atmosphere is phenomenal. And the second disc on the special edition is got
Yeah, I'm curious to hear about that. Yeah,
it's got a lot of live songs. So it's got live songs of The Silent Creature, Fearless Undead Machines, and then it's got pre-recorded different types of vocals and different types of like rehearsals of the songs that are on the album. So you hear songs in a little bit sounding different, some modifications in the vocal lines, as well as some of the live songs which sound phenomenal. And for me, it's good. I mean, the rehearsals that they put on here, I mean, the recording is good. It's like pre-production, but ultimately what came out on the album is the best sounding songs.
Do you know if the band ever did the album in full live? Ever played the album?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if they did that. I mean, but that was obviously going to be something
if
that
they had, you would have known about it because you've been.
Yeah, they would play it from beginning to end and probably have a lot of graphics and tapestries, maybe some video of fucking zombies like ripping people's fucking heads off and shit.
Is it Maryland Death Fest? You're getting a lot of them, but they're particularly picking someone and going like, no, to play this album full. So they've got like Pig Destroyer doing Prowler in the Yard, Conversion, Jane Doe. Maybe something like that will come up. I think there's a venue as well.
Well, then they would definitely have to be on the headlining end, and you just don't know if that's something that would come to fruition, because again, this is an album over an hour's length. Wedge in between where he's getting the crowd pumped up, talking to the crowd. Now you're talking about like an hour and 20-minute live set. Yeah. So I don't, but it would be special. It would be pretty sick to see.
I've seen this venue as well. They get a band, like they got Exalda for 2 nights, and they're like, right, do Salt and the Vatican the first night, the Law the second night, and they got Blood Incantation and went do this album. So like 2 nights, and 2 nights it was different albums in full. The whole playing the album in full thing's becoming a real trend at the moment, but I enjoy it. I
love it. Yeah, I saw Exhorter like a little less than 2 years ago, at a relatively local club in Frederick, Maryland, and they played The Law from beginning to end. I also met Kyle and took a picture with him and talked to him for a little bit. And just, The Law is one of my favorite albums, and I saw him back in the day when they toured with Entombed. When the Law came out. No, actually, no. Yeah, when I saw them in Frederick, they played Exhorter. They played Slaughter in the Vatican. Yeah, from front to back, and man, that's like one of the most brutal albums. It was great. It was just great. Yeah,
but I think I can't see King not wanting to do that one day, to play that album in full, definitely.
Yeah.
So moving on to the next album, I don't know if there's EPs or anything in the middle. What comes? This is the main one we're going to touch on, isn't it? The Behind the Mourner's Veil. I think this is an important one, but I don't know what order. I think Supernatural Addiction's next. Let's have a quick.
No, it's not. Oh yeah, Supernatural Addiction, yes, should be next after this.
Yeah,
This is another stopgap release. It was more of a, had a lot of, had a bunch of cover songs. King was, get back to, doing covers from DRI, Reaganomics, or Tankard, Zombie Attack, as well as, and King has gone on record, we talk a little bit about the guy. He's an interesting cat. Love him or hate him, he is very honest and with his convictions and what he believes in. So a lot of the times he doesn't really like much shit released after 1986. So he'll go back to saying, he doesn't like any Metallica, never liked any of their stuff. But like early, like some of the main.
He was on one recently. He's like, I got to kill them all, and everyone's excited about hearing it. This sounds like Ted Nugent to me. I don't know.
So like Anthrax, he does not like Anthrax. He hates them. He thinks that like the crunchy, heavy stomp riffs, that's just not his go-to. However, the first album, Fistful of Metal, with Neil Turbin on vocals, he worships that album. Loves
that album. Yeah,
loves it. It is actually a phenomenal. It's a very different band than what would happen then with Spreading the Disease, but it's a speed metal. It's pretty much a speed metal album, and so Death Rider is one of their favorite songs, and they cover that and they do it phenomenal. I mean, on this this EP, and I love the album cover. It's like, and it's like what's his name? Peter. Who's that old time horror dude who's like this the vampires, like Peter Cushing?
Yeah.
That's who looks like that's in the coffin. And the mausoleum. I was just listening to down by the mausoleum, down. I mean, it's just.
Yeah, is that Richard Burton as well? It looks a bit like him. I don't know if it's meant to be.
It probably is. It probably is. And it's very catchy. I also like, I think then potentially, because again, we have the long song on here with the Victims of the Master Plan, which is based off of the
the epic at the end, don't you? The 10-minute 6-parter. They go rush on this one
about the West Memphis Three, those murders. And that's a phenomenal song. And again, Deceased and Mike Bozier. So this EP was recorded at Oblivion Studios with Mike. And let's see, this has got the original sticker as well. Features 3 new Deceased speed metal rippers, along with covers of DRI, Warfare, Tankard, and Anthrax, and a bonus CD-ROM featuring the video of Ellie's Dementia, Up the Tombstones. I forgot to mention New Age of Total Warfare. Warfare, the first 4 albums, especially the first 3, are phenomenal. I mean, I love Pure Filth, and I mean Mayhem. That's my favorite Warfare album. But he's old school Warfare fan. So to hear these old songs, like, it's just really cool that he and the covers that they do of all these classic bands they're top notch. They're great.
I mean,
it's really very respectful.
We'll get to the covers as well later on because they've done full albums of covers. But
right.
That's another thing as well with Deceased is that they know what they're talking about because they have all these deep cuts on there as well, and you discover bands through Deceased covers and whatnot. But there's so many compilations and things to go through, and we are going to mainly stick to the albums. But 13 Frightened Souls and In the Mourner's Vow are just as important. You need them as much as the albums. But let's move on then to Supernatural Addiction. And carrying on with the concept theme, really, but not really. It's like a running narrative like the last one, where it's based on the Dead trilogy. This one's now based on classic horror works. So you've got like Edgar Allan Poe in the frame there. You got H.P. Lovecraft hiding in the closet there. It looks like he's just standing in the doorway. Actually, I don't know who this guy is reading the book, but
I don't know, some old fucker.
Yeah, but then on the bookshelf there's what is it? The
Tiki doll.
You've got a doll, but on the books on the bookshelf, you've got the Great God Pan, like just other classic horror stories as well. So you got Faces in the Fire there, and just really cool.
And so you have the Headbangers, the Hell's Headbangers reissue.
This is the Hell's Headbangers edition,
Slightly remastered, got bonus songs,
bonus tracks,
but so this album, you know what? I'm trying to think. Do you have Metal Archives up?
Yeah.
Okay, so type in this album, look this up, and who was it originally released by? I think they were still on Relapse, right?
Yes, the original edition was Relapse.
Exactly. Yeah. So when this came out in 2000, and King goes on record, even to this day, to say that this is his favorite Deceased album still to this day. So when Relapse Records released this album, one of King's favorite movies, which came out only a few years prior, and it's actually one of my favorite movies, is The Blair Witch Project, especially the mockumentary that they put on TV. That came out on the History Channel over here, that it made us all think that this was real. It was really genius. But the wooden, so on the reissue you see one of them, the little wooden totems. When the Relapse wouldn't be due to copyright, they would not. The original album cover does not have that on there. So when he was able to reissue the album through Hell's Headbangers, because this started the Hell's Headbangers, this reissue started the Hell's Headbangers collaboration with Deceased. He was able to sneak that in there. But
Yeah, so this
He-
was reissued by Hell's Headbangers in 2012, and yeah, it looks like the band
Right.
have been with them ever since. They've got
Yep.
a good relationship with them, and he was said, of all the years being messed around by labels, and he's been on the big ones. He's been on Relapse, been on Metal Blade. But he said they're the band, they're the label. He's the only label he's dealt with where they do what they say and say what they do, and there's no hiddenness,
Yeah.
no messing around. And
Yeah. And the thing is with the transition, and I think we should, before we get into this album, and again, it's great that when they did the reissue, that he was able to get the Totem, the Blair Witch Project Totem back in there, because the last song on this, Ellie's Dementia, is about Ellie Kedward, the witch from the Blair Witch Project. So that it all ties in. So I'm sure that was a big win for him. But with Relapse, when they left Relapse Records, Deceased felt like they were a little scorned in a lot of different ways. What wound up happening is, you saw the trends in the metal that were happening. Deceased were going in a different direction, while Deceased were, going in a direction of, we're going to start merging more of our influences with traditional metal and with the death and thrash and the underground ways. You had Relapse, who were bringing in a lot of heavy hitters, Incantation was still doing really well. You had then you had Dying Fetus getting signed, and Dying Fetus then was starting to lay waste with all their touring and how their albums were selling. So this type of music was not being appreciated as much by Relapse Records. And so then what you started seeing a wanting of the support of Deceased in favor of these other bands that were selling more. So
can you the brutality, and the technicality.
And we saw that with Roadrunner Records. I mean, unfortunately, the music scene is a very cutthroat in a lot of different ways. So can you imagine how that must have felt for King, who knew the label Relapse Records from its infancy, and where they were really pushing them in the beginning, and he had became friends with the early owners and all this other stuff. Now to be kind of cast aside like a redheaded stepchild, that must not have felt well. And he was, this is his music, this is his life, this is his craft. He's like, well, fuck these motherfuckers. I'm going to go someplace where my stuff is going to be appreciated. And Hell's Headbangers, now with Relapse Records, we were talking about Relapse being like one of the most popular and biggest labels. But if you've seen over the years, Relapse doesn't have a whole lot of bands on their labels anymore. They used to be the creme de la creme, but then you had these smaller distros, Hell's Headbangers, my buddy Matt out in Colorado, Dark Descent Records, where their bands started.
Dark Descent,
in their distro. Look at those fucking distros on both of them, how huge they are.
Yeah.
Completely cut into Relapse. So Relapse doesn't really do any distro. They really concentrate now on their bands and their merch. They can't even compete with the distros of like the labels that I mentioned. So they stopped doing that. So for King then to come over to Hell's Headbangers, and Hell's Headbangers is like, okay, Supernatural Addiction, let's do it. Let's tweak it a little bit, make the sound a little bit crispier, and put some songs on it. And this collaboration and the love, how the band was welcomed and with open arms. I think, I mean, again, this is what I feel. I don't want to speak for him, but it was like a second home for the dude. Like a new start, for a label to appreciate what you've done with your back catalog going forward. This is what we're going to do for you. That had to have made him feel like fucking phenomenal.
Yeah, and you can tell you need to be somewhere that's run by fans, because having a business head is one thing, and Hell's Headbangers obviously have got the business head screwed on, because they're doing really fucking well at the moment. But it has come from a passion, and they've got their numbers right, and they've got it all thing. But they're putting out stuff that's good. It's nice, it's one thing to have the numbers, but if you're just concentrating on that and that alone, it always goes haywire eventually, because you don't know where to follow the numbers next, rather than just going with your gut instinct and putting out what you know and what you love. And if it is good, people will come to it. And it looks like that's what's happening with both the shop and the label. And
So what
the
did you
guys
think of
now
this
gonna-
album? What did you think of this
I
album?
love it.
Fearless.
Premonition, it's fucking awesome. Yeah, I
Oh,
mean, it's
God.
just
Those melodies.
yeah. It's all, but the
it's like I can't get that.
and it's
fucking
just like a
out of my
typical.
head.
It's a classic heavy metal song, isn't it? It doesn't even, with death metal, no, this is just, it's like an Iron Maiden song. Yeah,
Bingo.
and the whole album's like that, and just again, it's just one step on from Fearless Dead Machines, where you've got that perfect mix of now. I think over time it's more of a death metal with heavy metal element, and then now it's becoming like a heavy metal band with death metal elements. It's kind of gone like that. It's merged the other way around as we go forward. But yeah, I mean, I think generally speaking, with deceased fans, these are the two that people argue over what the best albums are. And I think I lean more to Supernatural Addiction, but
Okay.
no particular reason. I just think, we're just more with the melodic territory really in this one. It's got the edge for me. But no, we're keeping on really on this one.
And I really like the biographical nature of the reissue that he writes. I thought Hell's Headbangers really did a very nice. They put together a really great booklet. The lyrics are fleshed out. They're great. The lyrics on this album are really good. But I really like King's expose about how Supernatural Addiction came about, why it came about, the influences, and the reissue production values of it. That's the stuff I really like nowadays. I don't buy as much physical. I with the writing that I do, I get a lot of promos, but I do still buy stuff. But I'm looking always for like those limited editions or like the liner notes where the band, it's not a fucking thanks list, where they go in depth about talking about what went on with the recording. That's the stuff I eat that stuff up.
Yeah,
I'm a sucker for that fucking shit all the time.
Yeah, same with me. I love all the liner notes and reading the story behind it all, and that's you get more respect for the album as well when you know what goes into it or what's behind it. And yeah, King obviously as well, as we've said, King's he doesn't find it hard to come up with stuff to speak about. I bet those liner notes that he writes as well have had to be edited and another fantastic addition really to the catalogue. So next we got another transitional album.
And another shirt change over here. So this is from their one of their live shows. It was limited edition. It says Death Metal from the Grave. But it's got Vincent Price on the front. You may not be able to see it.
That's an old school one, yeah. The black and white.
It's a tour shirt, and I love this shirt. So yeah,
when we get to the last one, are you going to have like a deceased tattooed across your chest?
I actually don't. But yeah. No, I don't want the people to get too excited with my heaving chest. So I'll leave my. I promise to leave my shirt on.
So this is a first for the band. This is the first album with Dave Costello on drums. We haven't really gone through much with the lineups, to be honest, but they pretty much have the solid lineup, don't they? They have the change here and there, but it's pretty solid all the way through. I think you got like 3 main.
Yeah, and this album again. So we talked about the reissue. So Deceased, we didn't get to. It wouldn't be until which album? Where they were fully signed to Relapse Records. I don't remember, if it was 2012, that's when their collaboration with that reissues. But so as the Weird Travel On comes about, the band is no longer on Relapse Records. And is this on the back? Is that Thrash Corner Records?
I think this one is... No, this is Lost Operation. Lost Apparitions.
All right, here we
Oh,
go.
Shrieks from the Hearse as well. So
Okay, everybody,
I've
don't
got
get
both.
too excited. Don't get too excited. Whoa, whoa, what's that? Yeah. So this album was released. The original album was released on Thrash Corner Records. So because I have a first pressing of this. And
Yeah.
this album came out in 2005. It was released in conjunction with the Shrieks from the Hearse. It was also distributed by Season of Mist in France. But so Thrash Corner Records is out in Puerto Rico. My friend Ronaldo out there has been a huge Internal Bleeding fan. He was huge with the Maryland scene as well, with Horror of Horrors back in the 90s. All the fests, he always comes out. He brings all of his distro stuff. So he was on a different label at that point. The reissues were different, but yeah, initially came out on Thrash Corner. I love this album cover.
Yeah, it's got a real spooky. It's just a real nice sort of magical spooky, I think is the best word for it. But yeah, it's a nice atmospheric.
Like I was telling you, like later today, after we finish this, I'm going to be heading out to the Maryland State Fair. So this reminds me of carnivals, like fairs, and I went to some fucked up fairs up in New York when growing up in Long Island and going to the city. Then there were these fairs, in the summertime. We'd go to New Jersey, Pennsylvania, upstate New York, and some of these rides were put together by some of the creepy motherfuckers that are on this cover. You didn't know if you were on one of these.
Regan from The Exorcist in the middle there as well. Yeah, you look at some of them, you're like, I ain't going on that.
You got a little Linda Blair over there, and it's just like you just didn't know if when I was on those rides, if they were gonna fucking fall apart and you're gonna fall to your death. But yeah, so Dave drums on this album because, and I don't want to get too much into it. I mean, Keith King has been very transparent with stuff, and we'll talk about the book in a little, maybe after this. But he had some serious health issues with so being able to start getting that stamina up again, to be able to drum and sing. Now, again, he knows drums like the back of his hand, so he can write the drum patterns. But to be able to play that stuff, he just, he had to give the reins over. And I'm sure that was pretty difficult for him.
Yeah. Yeah, he's open about it. He was on the Hell's Headbangers podcast, and he goes through the whole story of the band. That was a really good one. He's been on I forget the guy. He does a show, but his main channel's Marty Worm.
Okay.
And he's been on, like you're doing with me now. He went on Marty Worm's channel, and they went through the Iron Maiden back catalogue. You can imagine how that was like 2-3 hour long shows. It was epic. They did a Black Sabbath one as well. But
if we don't shut the fuck up soon, that we're going to be at that time schedule too.
That's fine. That's fine.
It doesn't matter. Shit, I love talking.
But yeah, he goes into all that. So yeah, you're not. It's out there. Yeah, but yeah, he said, I've got to hand it over, and I think he enjoys being the front man now as well, though.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
But yeah, I think this is more of the good stuff on the previous two albums, but the extreme side comes a bit more to the forefront on this one overall. This one's a bit more.
Yeah. Do you feel that their songwriting changed?
Yeah, Fright is a standout for me, the final track, funnily enough. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I just feel carrying on as we are, but the more extreme side of the earlier stuff kind of comes back. So this is more of like a full circle album, really.
Yeah, with the first album, Luck of the Corpse, you had not quite blast beats. Deceased was never one to do blast beats. Primitive style blast beats, to the extent where it gets to that, my favorite death metal album of all time, folks, is Slaughter's Strapado, Slaughter from Canada. I
Yeah.
know
Okay.
album.
Yeah.
And I was in touch years ago with Dave Hewson because I wound up, Marquee Records out of Brazil. They did the reissues with all the Slaughter reissues. Then they did when they formed Strapido and all that stuff. But that's my favorite, and that had primitive blast beats. So this album, as the Weird Travel On, is the only Deceased album with actual true blast beats. Dave does the blast, the Funeral Parlor Secret.
Yeah.
So
So Dave's going to bring that new. He's going to bring a new dynamic to the band, isn't he? And
yeah.
and yeah, I suppose when King was drumming on those early albums, what the blast beat. Once something gets a title, that's what it becomes. But before that, when it's still evolving, and I don't think Pete Sandoval thought he was blast beating on those early Terrorizer recordings. He was just drumming as fast as he could,
Right.
Once we got that title, blast beat, like, right, that's the blast beat, okay, and then we can move on from there. But no, yeah, nice addition.
It's a good album. It's a good album. I would say that for so here you had their last two albums, Fearless Undead Machine, Supernatural Addiction, where they were intertwining like the metal and becoming a little bit more melodic. This then, I'm not saying that it abandoned that, but they upped the aggression in a lot of different ways. The songwriting was really top notch. I did feel slightly that the songs suffered a little bit in terms of catchiness, where the previous albums were, I felt like the songs were a little catchier. On this, I just thought that, they weren't as catchy, but I still cranked this album up. I was just listening to this the other day with those fucking blasts and
Yeah,
love it.
sometimes as an album where when a band's evolving to each album, there's like, right, this is the first one where this happens, and hello, what's your favorite Deceased album?
What would be your favorite? And she looks at you just like a cat, like, what's he saying? All right, go down. But yeah, no, definitely a good song in the catalog, a good album in the catalog, just definitely a different approach. But
sometimes an album comes along, though, doesn't it? In any bands with a long catalog, where they might not have set a new standard, but it did maintain the standard. It was just as good as what's come before, but didn't throw a curveball in. It didn't add an element or add a. And sometimes it's just an album that's just good, and then those albums are the ones that get overlooked somewhat. But I think, I think if you're a Deceased fan and you feel like listening to Deceased, but you feel like something different, maybe chuck that one on, because it's probably the one that isn't get played that often.
Yeah, and there could have been a transition with the band at that point as well, because remember, they were off of Relapse Records. They have to get a new label. They're writing songs. They want to get. It's been a little bit since the last album was released, so sometimes that could bleed into a variety of different factors with recording and songwriting and things like that.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So then we got, again, it gets a bit. There's loads of compilations and whatnot, so we're just going to go straight to the actual albums. And funnily enough, this is another favorite of King's. Did you know?
Yeah, I fucking love this album. Love it.
Yeah, and he feels is the most underappreciated album as well. He was saying, he said a lot. Yeah, people say Fearless Desperation or everything, he goes, and that's great, all well and good. Yeah, but he wished a few more people would bring up Surreal Overdose. And this is his favorite for, well, I'll let you tell the story because you probably know the story. Well, do you know the big thing about this one?
Oh, is it the album cover?
No, he had an accident where he had to rehabilitate himself. I don't know how bad he was injured, but he was like, I need to drum again.
And, yeah.
It's like, I just need to know I can. And yeah, he actually drummed on this album again.
Yep.
Just to get it done. And he said, like, this is his final drum job. And that was, so it's a sentimental thing for him for that. But this is a nice what I do find sometimes with some of the albums that they are a little, they can sometimes be too long. I think sometimes a song here or there could be trimmed, while this
Right.
one's nice, 8 tracks, no messing about. All the songs are pretty long for average, but yeah, apart from one little interlude track, this one's just a pretty solid 45 minutes, something like that. So
Yeah.
the fat's trimmed on this album.
Yeah, and the album I think came out in 2011. I remember he was at the Maryland Death Fest. He had the albums, he had the CDs. He was selling them, I think, out of his backpack or whatever. But you know, I got the. I don't have the poster anymore, but I wound up getting the special edition. It's from Japan, and it came out with. You know what? Hold on, I'm gonna get up for a second. I don't know if I have it. If I do, yes, motherfucker! I knew I had it. I forgot because when I moved, I took all my old posters that were given to me by people, a lot of my internal bleeding stuff, and I framed the shit. So you would be in your glory over here. So the Japanese edition came with a. Can you see?
Yeah.
Do I have to unblur? Or?
Yeah, it goes blurry, but then it goes. Go on, hold.
Can you
Move
see?
it over to your right a little bit. Yes, right. That's just focused. Nice. Yeah.
So it's a slipcase.
Yeah.
The album came with this was a paper booklet, and it's got all the lyrics, and it I think it's probably similar because I bought this I bought a few issues of this album because this may be my second favorite Deceased album, but in this he has liner notes. I don't think any other editions he does. So this has liner notes about what went into the album, and it goes extensive. It's several pages long. But one of the real bonus things about this is it came with a fucking poster, and the poster was a weird size, but it was large. But what I wound up doing is I had it was all ripped apart or whatever, but I straightened it out and I fucking framed it. You can't really fucking see.
It's getting this focus, but I get what it is, yeah. But it looks, I bet that looks awesome.
Yeah, it's a big ass poster. So to have that, that's really, really cool. Yeah, he got back into drumming with this, and it's brutal. It's fucking brutal. It's his most aggressive drumming. The songs are, I mean, Skin Crawling Progress, Kindred Assembly. I fucking love the way that begins. And then it gets really fast. He lets out that like the hood growl, and it's fucking fast as shit. And Off Kilter, Dying in Analog. If that's not like one of the best like song titles, I don't know what is. They were on fire on this. They continued along with the As the Weird Travel On, and
they're basically carrying on with they're keeping the melodic part of their sound, but where they up the ramp a little bit with the thrashiness, they've done that with this, but even more extreme, while still retaining that Deceased signature.
Yeah. Super, super fast, super brutal, heavy. The melodies were there, but it was. I love the album cover of the dichotomy of the person's in the hospital bed, but then you can slowly see it like transforming into like this horror scene, and there's like a lot of like different homages to various like small horror movies with like the little hands and shit running around with knives and stuff.
I think this one's a little different as well because I think they got a new. Did they get a new guitarist for this one as well? Is that right?
Shane. At this point, I think Shane entered, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it was still, and Shane is still with them, and he tours with them. He plays, and he's a staple in the local scene around.
This is Shane's first album, so yeah, there was another slight dynamic change in that as well. But if I remember rightly, the last track was really good. You've got the introduction track, and then it leads into yeah,
Yep.
Dying in Analog, and that's a
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
nice epic closer.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah,
I listened to this album so much. It's definitely next to Fearless Undead Machines. It's nothing against all the other releases. I say that they're all top notch, but this is like it's like Fearless is just slightly above. But as soon as Surreal came out, I was just like, oh my god, forget about it.
they've done it again.
They've done the motherfuckers.
Yeah, so we're getting there. So now we're up to the present album, and unfortunately, I've got the little sticker there. This is the last album with Dave.
I think it's apropos to do another Lady Gaga wardrobe change, so to get all the fans all excited. But because we're talking about the Ghostly White, so
yeah, a few weeks after recording this record, our drummer Dave Scarface Castillo tragically passed away in his homeland of El Salvador. His death has crushed all of our hearts. Above all, deceased's family, and much love and respect. We salute our fallen brother and keep his spirit with us forever. And yeah, you got a nice tribute to Dave there on the sticker. I kept that. But
me too.
Yeah, I don't know if this is this is actually my favorite Deceased album, and it must be because it was the first one I heard. But the first 5 tracks to me are just faultless. It's the epic opener, Mrs. Allardyce, but to serve the insane, the endless world, just the melodic solos on this as well, and it's the perfect mix of extreme metal and traditional heavy metal. They just nail it on this one, and I wouldn't say it was their best album, but it is my favorite. And
can we go on record as saying, and I could be wrong, but is this again, we know when they got signed to Hell's Headbangers in terms of the reissues, with the reissues with Supernatural Addiction, and I think we said Supernatural Addiction, maybe the reissue with Hell's Headbangers was like 2012. So
no, this is fully fledged Hell's Headbangers.
This is the first full-length album with Hell's Headbangers.
Yeah.
And
they put out that compilation of the demos. Did you see the one that came in a coffin? And
yeah. No, this is a great. This kind of got back. I thought Ghostly White kind of got back to. I think that this is a merging of the Fearless Undead Machines, the Supernatural Addiction sound with Surreal Overdose.
Yeah,
there's the prior album, so you have more melody starts coming back. The songs are still they're faster than Fearless and Supernatural, but those guitar melodies, you have some new wave of British heavy metal in there. Again, Deceased are because some of the band members are splintered in different parts of the East Coast. What winds up happening is then, if you're not going to be practicing all the time, then you do have kind of go-to set list. So a lot of the times their set lists are a little bit similar. I know that they're going out on a tour. I just saw that they have a pretty good tour that they're going out on. But so there are songs when I've seen them play, like, I want to see this album. I want to see Surreal get more love. But and it could be maybe the songs are a little bit, they're pretty extreme, a little complicated, but I've never seen them play a song live off of that album, much to my chagrin. But yeah, no, Ghostly White, I've seen them play. They played the Shivers live. They're not going to be able to do, Germ of Distorted Lore. You think that's probably their longest song, right? It's like it's almost like the Rime of the Ancient Mariner. It's over 13 minutes.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know if it's their longest song overall, but yeah, it's the longest one on this album. I've not they don't miss, they don't they've never been in a rush to finish a song either, even like on.
No, and you mentioned Miss Allardyce, and those
yeah, I think that's about 10 minutes. Yeah,
those melodies.
No, not Miss Allardyce, sorry. What was the one on the EP?
It was the Victims of Master Plan is over 10 minutes.
That's over 10, isn't it?
The Germ of Distorted Lore is the longest song. It's over 13 minutes. And There's a lot of different types of influences on this song. So a big staple, and this goes out to Mike Bullock, who joined the band, towards the end of their career, a Maryland band called Indestroy, and so there on Germ of Distorted Laura, there's like a riff that almost reminds me of something off of Indestroy's debut album. It's like it's this one fast part. It's kind of in the middle of the song. It's like it's very Indestroy, and there's definitely some I noticed on this album, which I love this album. I reviewed it. I got the shirt. There's some Voivod stuff going on in that song, in other parts. I just noticed with his vocals, because I really started honing in on this song recently, like really, really in depth listening to it because I love it so much. And this may be, in terms of musically speaking, this may be their most complicated album in terms of like the music patterns and everything. It's like musicianship wise, band at the top of their game. Why do you think that this is you said that this is like your favorite album?
Yeah, and out
with this was the first album that you listened?
I think I have a running theory. I think everyone's favorite anything is their first, and it's because it's the one that jumped on and hooked me in. I think that was maybe why. I certainly wouldn't argue with someone if they said, that it's better than Fearless Death Machines or Surreal Overdose or something like that. But yeah, these songs I just really gelled with them. It was just like, yeah, I like this band and want to jump in. But yeah, the Endless Well, I can't even pronounce this. Palpitations, Warning. It's just, especially where I am now, just what I like. It's just, it mixes everything I like. It's just everything. It's good. And you've just got this perfect merging of, Iron Maiden metal. I mean, the amount of riffs on this, I just think I could just picture Adrian Smith blazing along. But it's funny you should mention that it's this is probably their more technical or more like complicated song, because I would have thought that would have been with Surreal Overdose. I thought this was a bit more straightforward, but horses for courses. I would have. I think this one's a bit more. I think this is probably their most accessible album.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, right. I would. If someone said to me, anyone now, if I want to get into Deceased, I would have said, if you want to check it, this is as good a place to start as any. But of course, I think objectively, start with Fearless Death Machines and Supernatural Addiction. I think it's the main two for most people. Then move on to Surreal Overdose for some a bit underrated, and then fill the gaps in from there.
I really love the booklet that Hell's Headbangers did with Ghostly White. The layout, the graphic designs of this booklet. It's thick. It's got pictures to go along with every single song. And the graphics, I love obviously the one for Germ of Distorted Lore.
It's like one of those old school books, like like a collection of horror stories that you get as a kid.
Absolutely, completely. And with Germ of Distorted Lore, with that disturbing fucking creature, because this is one of my favorite Deceased songs. But then I do want to mention before we move on, Pale Surroundings, the last song, is such an ethereal, atmospheric, creepy, and phenomenal song, especially with the female vocals. The female vocals, especially at the end where, it's like, stay forever, my love. That's sorry. It's, to the young lady who sounds brilliant on it. I know that I just completely she's just like, really there, Frank? You sound horrible. But, when she's singing that part, stay forever, my love. Yeah. Stay forever, my love, as the song trails off. It's beautiful. It's creepy. It's atmospheric. And it just adds another layer to Deceased's complexity. Yeah, and I felt like this album, I know you said that, you felt like this is a little bit more straightforward. I find it musically like some of their most complex. I used to play guitar back in the day, but, I think I've talked about that. And it's probably for the greater good of everybody involved why I stopped playing.
I mean, it could be more thing, but then still be accessible. I mean, look at a band like Rush or something like that. It's some of their simpler stuff. You think, oh yeah, I'll be able to play that one easy enough. That's one of the more straightforward songs. And then when you go to do it, it's like, oh shit, you know. But yeah, you have got that as well. But and they're giving King Diamond a run for his money on that one, and that's
yeah,
the thing
good
with
point.
Deceased as well. Because when you look at the books, like the band photos and that, they're all like, yeah, you know, and it looks you know the band have fun, but when it comes to the music, you know they are serious. And yeah, with songs like that, they've got that element of fun to them, but they can still keep it atmospheric and dark, and they can swish it on when they need to for the story's sake. And like I say, these are all horror stories. These are like little melodic audio books, and yeah, just a great catalog and a great band. And yeah, and that's what we're up to present day. And maybe when the new album comes out, we can do a video reviewing that. There's some little there's stuff that we can show off. There's demo compilations, or just show those off quickly. We got a split here with Burning.
Very, very scary.
I can't see who this is. Is this Born in? Oh, Crucified Mortals. Yeah, that's the band I was trying to think of earlier. Yeah,
okay.
That's the he's Reaper Metal Productions, and his brother is Hell's Headbangers, but they kind of cross-pollinate.
Gotcha.
But yeah, this was the big one. The special edition that actually came in a coffin. But these are the first couple of demos with revamped artwork. You've got the
artwork is phenomenal.
Yeah,
so you've got the badass. So badass.
You've got the original artwork like in the corner of the thing now.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, like.
Yeah, you listen to those demos around the clock. You listen to those demos around the clock, from what I understand.
Yeah.
Some of their covers albums where some of those EPs, like we mentioned, 13 Frightened Souls, Victims of Master Plan, et cetera, then they come out with like something called Cadaver Traditions, and they put a lot of that stuff on. There's a double CD, they have,
I think I'm missing a couple of them, but I think, this one's 2 CDs. I think you got you got Rotten to the Core Volume 1 and 2, but I think a lot of that's on this as well. So it gets a bit complicating. But
Exciter, they do covers of Exciter, Cro-Mags. Obviously they're putting their older covers on here back again with Voivod, Reaganomics. They do another DRI cover of Madman. It's great.
You name it, they're on there. Yeah,
and
English Dogs, the Ramones, Tankard, Metal Church.
Know about the folks, you have a lot of different bands out there. When they do cover songs, some of them make the songs themselves in terms of where they'll change it. Deceased really, that King's not interested in any of that when he's doing these covers of Venom or Sodom or anything like that. He wants to give homage to the band, but he also wants to keep the song in its purest form. And so it just sounds like, Deceased covering a song. It's not sounding like a different type of band. So it's good. It's good stuff. They also came out with, I have it on my phone, but I don't, I have it the digital, but I reviewed the Thrash Times at Ridgemont High, which came out 2 years ago. I really, really love this compilation of cover songs because he covers some of my favorite songs. So his favorite thrash metal of all time is Power and Pain from Whiplash. The 1986 debut. And so what does he start out with? He starts out with the first, the first song is on a Spit on Your Grave. And then, to do songs, Sacrifice, from the band Sacrifice, Into the Universe from Artillery. Artillery's, their debut album, Fear of Tomorrow, is one of my favorite thrash albums of all time. And him doing Into the Universe, I'm just, and then doing Thrashing Rage from Voivod. I think they do Death Squad from, again, an obscure German thrash band from back in the day, Darkness. Demon Preacher. You know all about Death Wish from the UK. They only came out with 2 albums, and those first 2 albums, I mean, I do prefer the first one, At the Edge of Damnation. To Demon Preacher, but Demon Preacher is phenomenal. The way how it's how timing was perfect with the guitar riffing, and doing that song Demon Preacher. It just comes out it comes out great. I mean, I love that. I love that covers album. I was cranking that the other day, a few days, like back to back. I don't know, the other release, we Death Metal from Death Metal from the Dave. So this was like, I think, was this the last live show or something, or
there was the last live show with Dave. Yeah, they released it actually the same with Ghostly White. You could buy that and this together.
Yeah.
So yeah, you got two for one on that day.
And it was it's a great collection of live songs: Night of the Deceased, The Premonition, Fading Survival, The Mausoleum, Psychedelic Warriors, Morbid Shape in Black, The Silent Creature, Haunted Cerebell, Haunted, The Triangle, Fearless Undead Machines. It's a great sounding live
fantastic
album.
Set list, fantastic sound, and do you know what? Some of the best live albums are that. Like, we didn't even, because apparently it was a soundboard recording that the guy just went, oh, do you want this? And it was like, oh. And it just happened to be the last gig with Dave, so it just fit perfectly. And nice little tribute to him inside
it was good.
there.
It was really cool for them to do that. I thought there was such respect. Rest in power there, Dave. It's such a shame. Go out to the band. Dave's family. It is such a shame. But it was a lot of love and respect were done with when they released Ghostly White, to put the sticker on there and then to come out with a live album. And the other thing that we were talking about, outside of the albums is, and you don't have this, is the Stay Ugly book.
Yes, tell me about this, because I did not know about that till you held it up. So this is a King Fowley autobiography.
Yeah, I don't want to tell you about it. No, I'm joking. So
you have to. Yeah.
And I have it's somewhere it's downstairs. I have he with the sales of the book, he also, the first several copies, you got a personal bookmark. So I have that downstairs. But so it's the Stay Ugly: The Life and Near Deaths of King Fowley, the autobiography by King Fowley with Mike Sloan. So King, this is a really fucking good book. Like, really. There are some vintage pictures in here. He talks about, what it was like growing up with limited money. When his mom passed away years ago, that took a huge toll on him. He loved his mother dearly, and goes through the trials and tribulations, what it was like growing up in the the DC, Maryland, Virginia metropolitan area, what the scene was like. Ravage. I'm not saying anything that's not in the fucking book, but going to record, ripping off the records and then selling them or whatever, or like basically like, fuck you to the record store, I'm going to take this, and listening to the albums, experimenting with different types of substances, what that was like, and then playing shows. There's people that weigh in from the local scene, talking about King, talking about some of those classic shows. There are let me see if there's some. There's quite a collection of me in that shirt my mom made me wear after the How Do You Spell Relief Cocaine Yearbook picture incident. So again, it's not coming in clear or whatever, but that
did focus. Yeah, it's all right. You got the idea of what's going on.
Yeah, he's got. And then there's something as a legendary show where the beer can collection after a death bash deceased party. So, and I've been to, back in like the mid 90s, I've been to some of these like house shows down here. And they, with bands were playing in the basement, and it's fucking crazy shit. But there's this one picture of this. I don't know, you can't really see it, but you have to buy the book. There's like, I don't know how many beer cans that is behind the fence, but I would say in the thousands. It's got a picture of, the first deceased glossy promo picture for Relapse Records. And he talks about, his son, his son Kingsley. It's got pictures through the ages of when he was young up until current. And as him just being the front man now, he's got a grandkid now as well. And one of these pictures with his with his wife. You know, he's wearing a Triumph shirt. I think that's Allied Forces, if I'm not mistaken. But you know, he talks about what it was like. You know, some of the health issues that he struggled with. You know, the label struggles and the successes. And it's a very I found it to be not a digital version. It was very organic and it was written in analog.
Yeah.
In terms,
No,
there's a lot.
I'll be interested to see if I can get hold of a copy of that. It's yeah.
Yeah, you'd probably have to go to the Deceased site or, you know, contact.
Yeah, if I see King is on a podcast, I'll drop everything and listen to it. And you know, I'll get an obscure album that I've never heard of. It's like, well, if he recommends it, I'm going to check it out, or he just gives you a new, like a take on an album that was, I never thought of it like that before. And yeah, he's an interesting guy. I'd like to.
Yeah, he's a great guy. He's fun. He's fun. You know, I've ripped on him over the years with things. You know, with Ghost. You know, you and I have talked about. You know, Ghost. I would have always thought would have been like kind of like a blueprint for some of the music that he liked and grew up with like Blue Oyster Cult and Merciful Fate. But he was like, nah, you know, those are a bunch of posers. I can't stand those guys. You know, but you know, he still likes some of the bands that are around the old school band. Obviously, Voivod is the upper echelon. He still likes Creator. You know, Millie still putting out. You know, Creator still fucking killing it to this day. You know, they had their one area where they kind of went off in a different direction, but you know, coming back to the full thrash scene with Violent Revolution years ago, you know, he's a funny guy. You know, when you're talking to him, he's got a lot of stories. You know, he prints up shirts as well. He's got a friend that does these shirts, and they print up vintage shirts, and I'll buy a bunch. You know, I bought stuff from Hallows Eve to Onslaught to Whiplash to Celtic Frost, and the shirts are always like the high quality that they print up. And he's a good guy. He's fun. He's fun. I've known the motherfucker. Like I said, I've known him since '95. So that's quite a long time to know somebody, and seeing him at shows, seeing him play. He's seen me play back in the day with Internal Bleeding. So you know, we have a great deal of respect and love for one another. And I think he's in a lot of ways a musical genius with some of the stuff that he's come up with. I know that you know some of the stuff that I sent you. One of the posters, like it was at Atlas Brew Works years ago. That massive artwork that they had there, and because they were doing a double set, it was October 31, his other band, and Deceit. And I took the poster off the wall and I framed it. And but at that show, you know, they filmed us. They had a film crew coming around, and you know, I got filmed. They said a few things. It's supposed to come out for a Deceased movie. There's supposed to be a movie about his life. So you know, sometimes those things, you know, especially when it's done independently with, you know, funds and things like that, and being able to edit, it could take actually several years for something like that to come out.
Yeah.
So hopefully it will. But boy, I don't think I've ever talked about Deceased for this long. It's been great.
Yeah, I've had one. I didn't show off as a live album there. That's another good live recording.
It's a great cover.
But yeah, to sum up, really, I think, yeah, you got a real varied, always evolving back catalogue that's solid, and some great heavy metal that I think anyone, whatever your preferred genre, that there's something in Deceased for you, you know. And
absolutely.
Yeah, I think they're going to leave behind a awesome legacy, and I think time's going to be really kind to them. And
I hope.
Yeah, it was great doing this with you. Have you got any? Yeah, do you want to sum up what you think of Deceased? And
yeah, I mean, I think you said you said something really pretty powerful. You said, you know, in terms of leaving behind a legacy, but also their music, like anybody could find anything in their music that they would like. So maybe there's a fan who doesn't really like brutal and fast stuff or really aggressive, but likes some of the things more on the melodic side. Well, hey, you have Fearless Undead Machines, you have Supernatural Addiction.
Yeah.
Person who wants like really raw, primitive brutality, you may be looking at, you know, Luck of the Corpse, 13 Frightened Souls, Blueprints for Madness. But then even up in the aggression to points of like where, you know, Surreal Overdose, you know, and, you know, or the combining of all the different types of things that make have made Deceased, and which Ghostly White. I think that's actually that was something that you said, hey, if there was somebody who said like, give me a good description of what this band's like. I've read about them. I really never heard their music, but to give them Ghostly White, the last album that they did, where it's got, definitely a lot more of their aggression from their last several albums, but then combining the melody and the traditional metal components of some of their other releases is it's kind of like a perfect, it's a happy medium. So, you have a band who has struggled through the years back in the day, coming out with rehearsal tapes, for and demos and stuff, for, a good 5, 6, 7 years before they actually got a record deal with Relapse Records. But, between the different revolving doors of band members and labels, he never packed it in. He was a man with a conviction because of his love for the scene, his love for the music, his love for the fans, that he continued. He continued onward and upward and kept on plugging away. And so, maybe the years that, there's several years between albums now, 5 to 7 years. You get older. You're not under certain types of contractual obligations like you were back in the day, where we had to come out with an album every 2 or 3 years or something like that. So you have a little bit more of a luxury, but it gives the band a little bit more time to really flesh out some of the songs and to develop them a little bit better. So I think the band's been on fire, especially with these last 2 releases with Ghostly White and Surreal Overdose. Just there's not a shortage of ideas, and I listen to those albums. I'm just like fucking mesmerized, as well as all their past material. I just think that they just combine so many different types of genres that it's impossible not to like their stuff. But then again, I'm biased. I've been a fan since 1991.
Well, exactly. That's why they're an infectious band, and you've stuck with them all this time, and it's testament to their legacy. And then people can jump on it at the end and work their way back. And some catalogs it just works, and Deceased is one of those bands that, like I said at the beginning, they're the full package. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. With the discography,
with the artwork, the aesthetics of the band, he's got it all going on.
Yeah. So, great fucking band.
Well, thanks for joining me as always, Frank. It's always great having you on. And do you want to tell us about what you've been up to, what you've got coming up?
I mean, I still write for Teeth of the Divine. I love all those guys, Eric Thomas, all the gentlemen that we write with. It's, I've reviewed some pretty major albums this year. Metallica. I actually did like I do like the new album. But I've reviewed some other prominent albums, the Reformation of Sorrow, that Long Island death doom band Sorrow coming back with a new album was just phenomenal. I just reviewed the new Afterbirth and the new Dying Fetus and the new Cannibal Corpse. I would imagine.
Oh, you've heard the new Cannibal Corpse, yeah?
Yeah, I've had it for a few weeks now. And I will let my review speak for itself. I've been a Cannibal Corpse fan since the first album. And for the most part, with the amount of albums that fucking band has, you're going to have your plateaus, your highs.
Yeah.
I don't think they've ever released a bad album, and the new album is good. It's just I felt that there's only a 2-year gap with the last album that was released. Personally speaking, I think this new album was a bit rushed. But then, like I said, I reviewed the new Afterbirth. I love them. I love Cody. I've known them forever. And then the new Dying Fetus. I mean, it's, I know the band very well. I've known John forever. I've recently gotten into touch with Trey. I was at a show with him and we exchanged numbers, the drummer, and he's great. The new album just fucking slaughters the fuck out of me. Just decapitates my head every time I listen to it. So I'm loving that. Other than that, in terms of music stuff, Mike Bozier, who owns Oblivion Studios, who does a lot of the Deceased recordings and who's been in a plethora of bands and who's a phenomenal guitarist. Last year's album, Snipers of Babel, I was on several songs on that. and that album came out on the Horror, Pain, Gore, Death, Mike Giuliano's label. And then, so Mike Bozier, he's got another band called Crush Human. And a few months ago, he had asked me to come in. He wanted me to be on the album. So I'm on the song. I'm going to be on a few songs. I kind of did some like scat type of vocals where I was just starting to growl and sing a bunch of stuff. So he may throw some of those parts in through other parts of the song. He was very angry. I'll say that. I was very angry that day, which bodes well. But I'm on the song Deep End, and the video, they posted the video recently, and it's actually, hey, listen, I'm not fucking Lil Wayne. I'm not Kendrick Lamar. I'm not fucking James Hetfield. But to have, for the variety of sites that's been posted on, I told Mike the other day, I said, you may want to make this a YouTube video now after they posted it, because it's like, 800 views, and that's actually kind of cool for me, because I'm there to help the band out. But the song is Deep End. It's going to be on the forthcoming Crush Human album on Horror, Pain, Gore, Death. Bozier's asked me to come back in because they haven't solidified a release date. He said, Frank, he's like, I think I want you to do some more vocals on the album. So I was like, hey, no fucking problem there, brother. And so yeah, I did vocals, a variety of highs, mid-range, gurgly vocals, the real inhale, deep, some nice fucking growls. And then he had told me, and again, this is, you never know where things are going to pan out, because he knows our collaboration, is very close. We have a deep friendship, and any type of thing that he's got coming up, I said, I'm game. Just call me up, just let me know. We'll work it out. And there's a potential. Don't get your hopes up too much, everybody. You just never know. But perhaps he's also thinking about wanting to take this band Crush Human in a live arena, like being able to play live. And I've obviously thrown my hat in the ring. And so he is keeping me in mind for perhaps doing some live performances in some sort of maybe a guest spot or something. I don't know. But, it could happen. It could not happen. If it doesn't happen, I'm not going to be upset about it, because I love the collaborations that we do. But if it does happen, look out, motherfuckers. I'm going to knock you over in the pit. But that's pretty much it musically. I don't know. There's a few other bands that have reached out to me. There's actually a band from Russia. I'm not going to name their, I'll just say this, their last album, I was on several songs. They put a full panel live photo of me in it. I don't want to mention their name or whatever, but they're not from this country. And in terms of the underground death metal, they got a good amount of followers. They asked me to be their full-time vocalist, or at least a vocalist on the new album, from front to back. I'm still weighing it. I haven't gotten back to them. I will there, brother Max. You just give me some time. So again, in terms of playing live, there's no chance of that happening, from where they live. They're in Russia. But potentially if they came over to the United States, because I have a lot of contacts, that could definitely be different. But I'm still thinking about that right now. I just don't know.
And look, tours come and go, and gigs are nice, but an album is forever. So for you to be on a full album again, you'll be doing a lot of collaborations. But yeah, to get a full album from Uncle Frank will be awesome.
Yeah, and I'm going to be on, I know, Internal Bleeding, my alma mater, they're writing their new album, and Chris is, obviously reaches out. He's like, Frank, I'm going to have you on the new album again. So, we'll wait and see what that moment's going to be like. But I always enjoy this fucking going back and forth. I mean, you and I can jawbone for hours. It's ridiculous.
Oh yeah, it's awesome having you on, and yeah, obviously you're going to come back on soon enough.
Yeah,
we'll just pick the band. And obviously, if you've got anything coming out you want to put, or we could do, rather than just about catalog, we would just do an album review of something that's coming out in the year, something like that. But yeah, always great to have you on, Frank. And like I say, we were talking about Cannibal Corpse earlier. If this is your first video, go back and listen to Frank's tour stories when he nearly got on the wrong side of Mr. Chris Burns. So Barnes, not Burns, Barnes. But yeah, thanks for watching, everyone. Check out Deceased in the description. Check out Teeth of the Divine. And yeah, thanks for watching. We'll see you all soon.
See you later, motherfuckers.